What's up everyone? Today we're checking out a solid 12 Sky 2 build that can help take your character to the next level. If you're currently a beginner Rebirth 12 player, this setup will dramatically improve your gameplay experience. With stronger gear, better stats, and valuable companions, you'll hit harder, survive longer, and progress through the game much faster. To be honest, most players already have access to the majority of these items. The real game changer here is the weapon, and that's what makes this build stand out. But let's not waste any more time, let's jump straight into today's showcase and check out everything I've prepared for you guys. So, let's start with the full character breakdown. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is the Palace rank. Currently, this character is at Palace rank 94, and it will take roughly 4 billion more silver to reach the maximum Palace rank 96. This upgrade provides a nice boost, especially in terms of critical defense, which becomes increasingly important in both PvP and higher level content. Moving on to the title, this character is using a level 12 title. Reaching this title requires around 50,000 contribution points, which many players can obtain for free by participating in the lower level brackets and events. Despite being relatively accessible, it's a very valuable upgrade, providing approximately 4,000 additional health and around 300 extra damage. For a free-to-obtain enhancement, that's a significant boost to your overall character performance. Moving on to the mounts, this character is equipped with a fox and a defense deer. The fox provides a very nice 19% health boost and 16% damage boost, significantly increasing your survivability in both PvE and PvP situations. The defense deer is another valuable addition, offering extra defensive stats and health. More importantly, it comes with the current meta bonus of 15% critical rate. This can make a huge difference when fighting low to average geared players, allowing you to land critical hits more consistently and secure kills much faster. These are some of the most important miscellaneous items a character can have, especially since they are account bound and provide permanent benefits across your progression. Now let's talk about costumes. As usual, I highly recommend using a 100 stat costume setup. Combined with properly upgraded accessories and the gold scroll feature, these items provide a noticeable boost to your overall stats. While they may not seem game-changing individually, together they add a significant amount of health, damage, and other useful attributes that help maximize your character's performance. Now let's take a look at the gear setup. This is the violet gear set that was featured in my previous video. The entire set is upgraded to combine stage 12 with refine 10 across all pieces of equipment, and each piece has all 3 socket slots unlocked. One of the great things about this gear is that it's relatively accessible. It can be crafted directly in-game using materials and drops that players can farm through regular gameplay. While it does require some time and effort to fully upgrade, it's definitely achievable without needing extremely rare items. The setup also includes the same cape and pet that many players are already familiar with. In my opinion, these are average player items that can be obtained fairly easily compared to some of the more expensive endgame options. They still provide solid bonuses and fit perfectly into a balanced build like this one. Overall, the gear setup is a great example of a strong mid to high tier character. It's not built around ultra rare equipment, but it still delivers excellent performance thanks to the upgrades, refinements, and fully unlocked sockets. Now let's talk about the star of this build. This character uses a stage 12 RF spear, which is by far the most valuable piece of equipment in the entire setup. With an estimated value of around 700 to 800 billion silver, the weapon alone accounts for the majority of the build's total value. It provides outstanding damage output and greatly improves the character's effectiveness in both PvE and PvP situations. That being said, the refine is not perfect and still has room for improvement. Players looking to maximize the weapon's potential can continue investing in better refinements over time. Even in its current state, however, the weapon performs exceptionally well. When paired with a group of 4 additional players, this build becomes extremely effective in combat, allowing you to take down most opponents you encounter during faction wars, group fights, and PvP engagements. For players who are considering building a similar character, you don't necessarily need to start with a stage 12 RF weapon. In my opinion, a stage 9 RF weapon would be the minimum requirement I would recommend for this setup. It provides enough damage to make the build viable while giving you a solid foundation to upgrade toward the higher stages in the future. Now let's take a look at the character's stats while fully buffed. With all buffs active, the character reaches a total of 167,000 health, along with nearly 78,000 damage while using the Fox mount. We also have around 26,000 hit rate and close to 29,000 defense, making this a well-balanced setup for both PvE and PvP content. Overall, I would consider this an average to strong player build. It has more than enough power to comfortably complete all in-game events, farming activities, and most PvE content without any major difficulties. Now, if we switch from the Fox to the critical mount, the stats change slightly. We lose a bit of raw damage, but in return we gain a significant boost to critical attack. This setup is particularly effective against low to average geared players. The increased critical stats allow you to land stronger hits more consistently, making it much easier to secure kills in PvP encounters and small-scale fights. Depending on your playstyle, you can choose between the higher damage and health provided by the Fox or the more aggressive critical-focused setup. Both options are viable, but the critical mount definitely shines when it comes to player versus player combat. Now let's talk about the total investment behind this character. Adding everything together, this build represents an estimated value of around 1.5 trillion silver. Let's break it down. Palace progression, around 190 billion silver. Level 12 title, I would suggest to farm in-game contribution points. Fox mount, around 35 billion. Defense tier, roughly 150 billion. Violet gear set, between 100 and 150 billion. Cape, around 200 B silver. Pet, around 50 to 80 billion. Costume, approximately 10 billion. Accessories, around 7 billion. Stage 12 RF spear, valued between 700 and 800 billion silver. And finally, elixirs, which add another 10 billion. When you first hear a number like 1.5 trillion silver, it might sound like an impossible amount to reach. However, that's not entirely the case. Players who have been playing for a long time have already unlocked many of these systems through normal gameplay. Items such as the title, Fox mount, Violet gear set, pet, accessories, and even palace progression can all be obtained relatively easily over time by participating in events, farming, and daily activities. The real investment starts when we talk about the weapon. In my opinion, a stage 9 RF weapon is the minimum requirement I would recommend for this build. Up to that point, the investment is quite reasonable and the character already performs very well in both PvE and PvP. In terms of critical defense and overall survivability, as I mentioned in my previous video, Rebirth 12 content is currently dominated by extremely high damage output. No matter how strong your gear is, a character worth 1.5 trillion silver still won't be able to completely avoid dying from the normal attacks and critical hits of top-tier players. The damage in the current meta is simply too high. However, that's not to say that defensive stats are useless. Against low-tier and average opponents, the additional critical defense, and survivability from this build can make a noticeable difference. You'll be able to dodge or mitigate some incoming attacks, survive longer in fights, and create more opportunities to counterattack. So while this build won't turn you into an unkillable tank against the strongest players on the server, it does provide a solid balance of offense and defense that performs very well against the majority of opponents you'll encounter in everyday gameplay. Now let's move on to the most important part of the showcase, the damage test. Let's see how a character with this gear setup and these stats performs against an opponent wearing a full requirement set. As I mentioned earlier, this build becomes extremely powerful when played as part of a team and supported by party buffs. The combination of increased damage, critical stats, and utility buffs can significantly increase your effectiveness during combat. For our first test, we're using the Fox mount. Right away, we can see that the damage from normal attacks is already very impressive. The critical hits are averaging around 250,000 damage, which is more than enough to threaten and eliminate players wearing full requirement gear. Even if they equip max diamond pills. Now let's switch over to the critical mount. As mentioned previously, the current meta heavily favors critical damage and critical rate. By sacrificing a small amount of raw damage, we gain a substantial increase in our critical potential. The results speak for themselves. Against low to average geared players, this setup is devastating. And even when facing opponents equipped with full requirement gear, the build remains extremely dangerous. With a stage 12 RF weapon, high critical damage, and proper buffs, you can defeat fully geared opponents with relative ease, including players using a refined 25 Tier 1 cape and other defensive equipment. Of course, player skill, positioning, and timing will always play an important role. However, in terms of raw damage output, this build has more than enough power to compete against some of the strongest geared players you will encounter in the game. For players looking to participate in PvP, faction wars, and group fights, this setup offers an excellent balance between accessibility and performance, making it one of the strongest options available for its investment level. Let me know in the comments what you think about this build and what you'd like to see next. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and support the channel for more 12 Sky 2 content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.